Good morning, or whatever time of day it is when you're seeing this. This is Stephen D. And I have a message for all my progressive friends. And it's not going to be a big shock, but the Democratic Party is never, ever going to stop blaming us for Hillary's loss. Never. That doesn't matter if you were a Bernie supporter, but still voted for Hillary in the general election, or if you were a Stein supporter, one of the few that voted for Jill Stein, roughly around 1%, or if you simply didn't vote at all because you were so disgusted by the choices we had. They're never going to stop blaming you. And I'm going to give you a little personal feedback I received to show you what I'm talking about here. Now, back in early November, right after the election, one of the first big memes that the Hillary supporters and the new Democrats, the Democratic establishment essentially was putting out was that third parties, affected the outcome of the race so that Trump won. Their basis for this, that in a few critical swing states, if Jill Stein had not been running, they would have gotten all of her votes. And if the Libertarian Party candidate had not been running, they would have gotten at least 50% of his votes, and then Clinton would have won those critical states. And so I did an essay on caucus99%.com, and the title of that was "The Effect of Third Parties on Clinton's Loss by the Numbers." And I went into it in great detail. And others have also effectively, decimated this kind of ridiculous argument that third parties threw the election to Hillary. But I had a friend of mine, a Hillary supporter, and when he read what I wrote, this was his reaction to it. And I'm going to read you word for word. 1. People just didn't sit out. They changed who they voted for, and it appears that the white rural Republican counties were the biggest changers, so Clinton needed to do more to hold on to the votes of angry-ass countryfolk. Angry-ass countryfolk. Who liked the cut of Trump's jib. For example, she, meaning Clinton, got more votes than Obama out of Philly and Pittsburgh and still lost. Same thing happened in Florida. Look where the vote drop-off came from because it wasn't uniform. Now, he didn't give any links for that, but I'll take him at his word. 2, it's not an insult. Not an insult to blame voters for voting for Trump, or for failing to vote against him, or for failing to vote at all. In other words, you're to blame. This is what he goes on to say. The responsibility for this basic civil responsibility does not fall all on the candidate or the party. It actually falls primarily on each individual citizen. So, it's not really Hillary's fault, it's not really the Democratic Party's fault that they didn't gin up enough enthusiasm for their candidate, that their policies or campaign wasn't dynamic enough to generate people to come out and vote for. It's primarily our fault. And then one last thing he said, which I found particularly disturbing, and I want to read that to you too. And this is what it is. This is a question he put to me. Why are you writing it, though? he meant my essay about why third parties didn't affect the election. Is it just to blame Clinton and the DNC for the loss and absolve yourself and others like you for this complete clusterfuck? Let me read that again. And I'm paraphrasing it here. So why did I write that essay? Is it just to blame Clinton and the DNC for her loss and absolve me and others like me, like i.e. other Bernie supporters, other Stein supporters, progressives in general, for her losing to Trump, for this, quote, complete clusterfuck? And I have to say that really tells you all you really need to know, I guess. In the minds of Clinton supporters and the minds of New Democrats who still control the party, and by New Democrats I mean the Clinton, Obama, neoliberal Democrats, people like Chuck Schumer, who was recently elected as the Democratic Senate minority leader, instead of somebody more progressive, a man who spent his entire political life defending the interests of Wall Street. Those poor Wall Street people, they suffer so much. Those people are never going to, forgive or forget, and they're always going to blame people like me, who supported Bernie, who voted for Jill Stein. Now let me say personally, my vote had no effect on the election. Like a lot of people who voted for Jill Stein, I voted in a state where Clinton won easily. I live in New York State, not in New York City, but in New York State. And New York State almost always goes for the Democratic candidate, and it did this year. And a lot of Stein supporters around the country also voted, but even voted in states where Clinton won. And there were a lot of Bernie supporters who actually went out and voted for Clinton. You saw the reaction after the convention. Well, I'm not going to vote for Trump. A lot of people made that difficult decision if they lived in a swing state to vote for Hillary Clinton. I'm not going to say that they were wrong to do so or right to do so. They have a right to vote however they feels best. And probably a lot more of those people voted for Hillary Clinton than voted for Jill Stein. But that's irrelevant, because progressives are to blame, and angry-ass countryfolk are to blame, and Bernie bros are to blame, as we've recently learned. Again, continue to be blamed. Lack of African American turnout has been blamed. And that's a shocker, isn't it? You name it, they blamed everybody for it. Everybody but themselves. Now, you can say that all the white people, these quote angry-ass white country folk, were racist and were voting because they were racist and sexist. You can say that if you want. But the truth is that Hillary Clinton did much poorer among those groups of people than President Barack Obama. Yes, Barack Hussein Obama did better among these, quote, angry-ass country folks, white country folks, than Hillary Clinton did this year. And he was running against, arguably, much better candidates in McCain and in Mitt Romney. Certainly establishment Republican candidates. And you can say, well, so what? That was this year. That was 4 years ago. That's not now. Now they're racist and sexist. Before they weren't. But Hillary Clinton lost among white women voters, particularly among white women voters who did not receive a college education. Trump got 62% of their votes. Are they all sexist, those white women? Are they all racist? Maybe. Maybe they said something to do with the fact that Hillary Clinton's campaign, which, by the way, went out of its way to ensure that Trump would be the candidate she was running against, the, quote, Pied Piper candidate, as we learned from the Podesta email release by WikiLeaks. She went out of her way not to talk about, in her campaign, economic issues, certainly not in her advertising campaign. And I'm going to read you some numbers here. This comes from an article which I'll link below in Common Dreams. And this is what the study showed. It said both candidates spent most of their television advertising time attacking the other person's character. Shocker, right? In fact, the losing candidate's ad did little else. In other words, we're now talking about Hillary Clinton. This is what she focused her advertising, budget on, attacking Trump's character. And certainly Trump's character deserved to be attacked. Make no doubt about that. But why didn't she give us, telling us simply that Trump was a bad choice and a bad person, and therefore you should vote for me this year, when both candidates had unfavorables in above 50%, in the high 50s. Maybe not the best strategy, because Hillary Clinton, only 9% of her appeals and her ads were about jobs or the economy. Think about that. 9%. She devoted 9% of her advertising budget talking about jobs or the economy. Compare that to Donald Trump. He spent, remember, he didn't spend as much money as Clinton did, but he spent 34% of his advertising budget on talking about ads that discussed the economy. Now, you could say, well, maybe that doesn't really matter. But I think it did. What if Hillary Clinton, instead of simply attacking Trump's character, because the media was doing that for her anyway, right? Once that tape came out about, his sexual behavior, or at least claimed sexual behavior, which proved of assaulting women without their consent. Really disgusting thing. And the media ran with that quite a bit. So why didn't Hillary Clinton then turn her advertising budget to giving an explanation for why her economic agenda, her economic program, quote, the most progressive platform in the Democratic Party's history. Remember that? I do. And they talked about it frequently at the convention. Why did she stop doing that? Why? Yeah, maybe she should have been doing that. But she didn't. So, how is this my fault or your fault for the quote clusterfuck of Trump's election, when Hillary Clinton herself wanted to run against somebody like Trump or Cruz or Ben Carson, the quote worst, most offensive candidates running on the Republican side? Why is it our fault? that voter turnout was particularly low. Why is it the fault of racist whites, or sexists, when she couldn't even win, the majority of white women? I mean, she got a bare majority of college-educated white women. She did poorer than Barack Obama in just about every demographic you can think of, and I'll list some of them here for you. And this is from another article link I'll provide to you. Clinton underperformed Barack Obama's 2012 results among not only non-college educated whites, but also white men, black men and women, Hispanic men and women, Asian men and women of other races, every age group except voters over 65. So she outperformed Obama among voters over 65. That was it. Otherwise, she underperformed. And I'm at a loss to understand why the Democrats think that any of these people owe them their vote. What have they done for these people? And let's talk about specifically the working class. What has the Democratic Party done for the working class? And that's usually taken to mean as a code word or a synonym for poor white people. But the truth is that the number of the people in the working class, lower middle class to poor people, disproportionately are represented among minorities, particularly African Americans and Hispanics. You know what the median income for African Americans is, according to the U.S. Census? In the last year, in which we have some numbers, $35,000. Well, a tad over $35,000. Only about less than a third of white voters or whites make that amount of money. Their median income for all whites is $60,000, a little over $60,000. So as you can see, and this doesn't mean there aren't poor. I mean, I don't think that 60,000 is a great number either. It's not. You're struggling to get by a lot, but you're probably a little bit better off if you're making 60,000 than 35,000, certainly, right? But there are a number of poor people, white, black, Hispanic, whatever. And the truth of the matter is, Hillary Clinton underperformed among everyone who made, I think I'm going to go back and read this again. She underperformed Obama among voters of all races who made less than $30,000. So poor people, she didn't. More enthused, she underperformed. They either voted for Trump, they didn't vote, or they voted for Stein, or who knows. But she didn't get their votes. Poor people. Maybe if she'd been offering something that would help, those poor people would have made a difference. Now here's the other surprising thing. Trump didn't win whites by a significant amount. He didn't exceed Romney's totals hardly at all. I think you got, I'm looking at this, it says among all white voters, Trump did 1% better than Romney. And most of that gain was among poor and lower middle class whites, the quote working class whites, the quote angry ass country folk. But among college educated whites, and presumably people who make more money, Trump did less well. Yeah. He did less well among those groups. So, was the working class white vote the reason why Trump won? Not really. That kind of balanced out. Trump won because he got a larger percentage of the minority vote. Yeah, that's right. A larger percentage of the minority vote. He outperformed Romney in 2012 against Barack Obama. And of course, Hillary Clinton underperformed Barack Obama. The vote she took for as her entitlement, the vote she was sure of, the vote she didn't need to get, the vote she said she didn't need. Remember that? Remember when Clinton was and her campaign staff were saying, "We don't need you, progressives. We got this. We're going after moderate Republican votes." Remember that? Yeah, I do. But you and I, my friends, we're still going to be responsible for this, quote, clusterfuck of an election forever. You'll never hear just like Ralph Nader was responsible for Gore's loss, if you remember, this will be a continual refrain among the people who are currently in charge of the Democratic Party. Now, obviously the post-election review analysis, what went wrong, whatever, that the Democrats are going through right now isn't over, but it seems pretty clear at this point that they're not, just from what we're seeing in the media, that they're not putting much of an effort into really doing a hard look. Otherwise, Chucky Schumer doesn't get elected Senate Minority Leader, I'm sorry. Otherwise, maybe we'd have more than 2 Democratic senators, Bernie Sanders and Al Franken, who have spoken out against the Dakota Access Pipeline. That's right, only 2. Those people are being brutalized, abused, targeted. They're being treated like, we're at war. And they're unarmed. They're unarmed and nonviolent, and we're not shooting real bullets at them, but we're coming damn close. Putting hundreds of people in the hospital, threatening lives, and only 2 Democratic senators have spoken out against the water protectors and and their supporters. The native, indigenous Americans who were there on the ground trying to stop this pipeline from going into the Missouri River, passing through their reservation. So I think the signs are pretty clear that the Democratic Party, as we know it, has not learned anything new at all from this election. Now, I don't know. I don't have a solution for where progressives should go. The people who are responsible for this clusterfuck of election, for Trump's election, for imminent fascism. I don't know where we should go. There are people, like Bernie Sanders, who's clearly making a very determined effort to shift the Democratic Party to the left. And so are the people in organizations like Brand New Congress, who are working hard to elect more progressive Democrats by supporting them in, wherever they're running, whether it's in the primaries or general elections. And I believe they had some successes this past election cycle. But among the Democratic leadership, I'm not seeing much change. And I wish the best to Bernie Sanders in his efforts, and the best to brand new Congress, because I do want to see more progressive voices in the Democratic Party. But I'm not sure, if the party leadership just refuses to really change course. Because what have they done for the vast majority of Americans? White, black, Hispanic, particularly people who make, less than $60,000 per year, or less than, pick a number. Let's bump it up to 75,000. Not much. Not much at all. And it's only going to get worse, because as more of these people get older, they're going to be in more and more dire financial straits. As more of the young people come out burdened by college debt, financial debt system that was set up in large part a bipartisan effort of the Republicans and the Democrats, as more and more African Americans are incarcerated, and poor whites too, for nonviolent offenses, drug offenses. Again, a product of the Democratic administration. As more and more we see that the Democratic Party itself, when it's in power, does nothing to change the criminal, and I don't use that word lightly, the criminal activities of Wall Street and the financial industry, where we see, Wells Fargo, cheating people, ordinary working class people, quote unquote, regardless of race, out of their money. HSNBC, which money laundered, billions of dollars of Mexican cartel drug money. All the banks that have been involved in, rigging the markets for bonds and for all sorts of things. The Democrats didn't prosecute any of those people but President Obama didn't prosecute any of those people. He didn't go after them. I'm not saying Trump will, of course he won't. But he gave people that listened to his speeches the idea that he was going to make things better, that he was going to make it more fair, that he was for Main Street, not Wall Street. Well, we'll all see whether or not that's accurate. I'm fairly certain it won't be. But nonetheless, isn't that what the Democratic Party should have been doing, rather than Donald effing Trump? I'm sorry. The people that are responsible for this clusterfuck, my progressive friends, it's not us. It's the Democratic Party itself, and those who supported Hillary Clinton, come hell or high water. But they'll keep blaming us anyway. All I can say is, good luck with that, Democrats. Good luck with that. Stephen D, signing off until I see you again. Take care, everybody.